Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sharing my screen now, and I don't want to take such a long time. Can you see my screen presentation already?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So just to say, this whole exercise that Jakob presented now, the first results, they would not have been possible at all without the support of the registers in the countries. And so we are really very thankful for the support that we were given. We approached all these countries earlier last year, and we asked them to provide us with a set of metadata and to provide us access to the texts. And of course, the situation differs country by country. So there's not one single national database that resembles the other. We got a nearly complete set of metadata from Italy and from Spain, texts going back long time in Italy, even sometimes back to the 1980s. In Austria, we got great access to an online database, also with all the full texts of the sector level agreements, but with a somewhat smaller set of metadata. The same in Bulgaria, we got access to all the relevant sector level texts, plus a small set of metadata, but we did not get any company level agreements, which would be also important in a Bulgarian context, because it's predominated by company level bargaining. And we understand that it's not possible for NIPA to share this with us, but there might be possibilities for us to sign a non-disclosure agreement with them, and then we would get anonymized access to anonymized agreements. And this is potentially a way forward for other countries as well. We've done a similar thing with Slovakia, also in relation to anonymized company level agreements, which we got from the trade union. And then we also have two countries, Sweden and Germany, where we did not get access to the texts ourselves at all, simply because they are not publicly available. In Germany, we had the Thorsten Schulten and the WSI Tarifarchiv, and they've been very helpful, but to code the agreements, because they're also part of our network of correspondence, but they did not upload the agreements in our database. And Sweden is also a special case, and we are very thankful for the Medlingsinstitutet, who have volunteered to even assume the coding work for us, simply also because they felt it's too sensitive to hand out the agreements that they have been entrusted to hold for the social partners. In Denmark, we had to test what we call the so-called snowballing approach, because Denmark is a country without a national level fully comprehensive register. But our correspondent thankfully got good access to the employers organization DA, and we have Lars and his colleague here today. And I know that behind the scenes, you have supported our correspondent very much in providing him access to your agreement. So we're also very thankful for that. And let me just share very briefly the way the metadata were shared with us. Can you still see my Excel screen? Yeah. So
yes. Yeah,
for Bulgaria, this is what we asked all of the countries to provide to us. So we wanted to have the name of the collective agreement, an identifier linked to the collective agreement, possibly an identifier if there are renewals of collective agreements, start and an end date, validity date of these agreements, ideally also already the NACE 2-digit codes that relate to the agreement, and the link and access to the full text as said. And then we also told all registers, if you have that available, nice to have would be also the signatory parties, how many employees are covered by the agreement before extension or after extension, if that's relevant for your country, what's the bargaining level where the agreement was made, is it private versus a public sector agreement, and does the agreement include any wage clauses, yes or no? And so Bulgaria has come up with this set of metadata. Austria was able to provide us with time series even of the agreements and access to the full text. And they gave us access to their database. So Paul, I suppose, will say a little bit more about that later on. In Spain, we got this huge data file with, what was it, more than 3,000 lines, all of the Spanish collective agreements with a lot of extra information, also in terms of, what type of agreement it is, whether it's nationwide or relates to a specific region, who were the signatory parties on the employers and who the signatory parties on the union side, how many companies are covered, how many workers are covered, and the link to the full text. Pretty similar for Italy, which even gave us data down to the NACE 6-digit level. So a plurality of data deliverables, but this was really something we could, start working from. And this is the set of data that we gave to our correspondents, then to select the most appropriate collective agreements in relation to our research question and in relation to the low paid segment that we're interested in. And with this, I want to hand over now to the registers to let us know a little bit more about their experiences. Hand back to Fiona to moderate this. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Great.
Yes.
Fiona, go ahead.
I think I'll take it from here, right, Fiona? Yes. So thanks a lot, Christine, for showing us how this starts, because to me, it's really nice to start with Jakob's explanation of where we're headed and what the result is. But of course, this started with the CBA registries, to whom we're very grateful. And I want to start by just checking with those of you in the room. You've just seen the metadata that Christine presented for Italy, Spain, and Bulgaria. And we would like to launch a quick poll. So if I can ask Akash, or sorry, not Paul Schwab, but poll as in a polling. We'll do a poll in the Zoom meeting, and then we'll start with you, Enver. You've just seen some data presented from Bulgaria, Austria, Italy, and Spain. And I'd like to ask you if you consider, like, what in your own organization, what the metadata that you keep, what they look like, what are they most close to, or what do they resemble most? And if I can ask Niels or Akash to launch the first poll.
You should see the polls on the screen.
So you should see the poll and be able to answer it. If there's no perfect answer here, just choose the one that's closest to the answer you would like to give. We're not going to pin you down on this. We just like to have a little bit of an impression of where everybody is in this universe of metadata. And Niels, I can't see the progress of the poll, so if most people have answered, then you can simply close it. All right, thank you very much. I can see we're quite spread out over these different examples. Thank you for that. That's good for us to know where you are at, more or less. And as we said in the very beginning, there are a couple of organizations in this room that have not participated in the first pilot project. There are a couple of organizations that have participated. And one of the aims for this meeting for us really is to see if we can bring you in touch with each other and to see if we can discuss a little bit about how hard or how easy it is to participate in the making of this database. And to this end, we've asked each of the participating organizations to tell us a little bit about 5 minutes in to what extent they actually were able to deliver the data that was requested. Do you have this kind of data? Did you have to go find it? Were you unable to send some part of those data? And to go into some challenges you encountered, possibly based on some national specificities and how you overcame them. And I'd like to start with Paul Schwab from the Austrian CBA archive.
Okay. Hello, thank you, Jana. My name is Paul Schwab, and I work for the publishing house of the trade union in Austria. And we also manage the collective agreement database for the trade union. I can, of course, only talk about specific Austrian collective agreement data and my personal struggles with the tasks of the pilot project. I guess in the other countries, there will be other issues and hopefully also some solutions for them. With the Austrian data, I had to overcome two main issues because the data was missing or is missing still. In one case, I think I managed just fine. And in the others, I reached my personal limits. The first issue was the matching of the collective agreements to the NACE codes, because in our, or respectively in the pilot project, you also had to match them to the ISCO codes, but the problem was, or the issue was more or less the same. And we had this issue because in our database, we have no classification, or at least not the NACE code classification system. So I had to match them manually. And as you've seen, we matched them in the Excel file or in the Excel sheet we got provided. In Austria, we use a classification system, but it's a national one. It's an Austrian classification system. And this was also my main source to match the collective agreements to the NACE codes. And in the most cases, the classification corresponded. But in other cases, it was somehow different, and the problem was I couldn't really find out the reason why it differed in some sectors. So in the end, it was a little bit of guesswork on my side, but mostly the classification system, the national one, helped me with that. Yeah, and I think I did okay in this part. The second issue was harder, because it was to find the largest collective agreements in the sector, so with the highest coverage. The data is in Austria not public, or at least not on the level that I would have required for the task. There is a public statistics from the main employer organization, but it's mainly information about the coverage in a sector. So not on the collective agreement level, but only how many workers are covered in this one sector. And also some sectors are not available at all, because the employers organization, it's not part of the employers organization. And another issue also with this is that in some sectors contain of numerous collective agreements, and then of course it's hard to find the large one. Also, in some sectors, it's more or less divided equally. The solution there is, of course, annotate every collective agreement that's in the sector. And then in some sectors, it's easy because there's just two, and you know the main collective agreement, and then, of course, that's the largest one. And they also have a solution more or less for the problem with the, because there are no numbers for that. But for example, in Austria, there is for every sector or subsector, there is a specific trade union representative. So, I mean, we didn't do it for the pilot project, but it would be able, or it would be possible to, very time consuming, but still ask every representative about the coverage in these sectors. So, yeah. So, but another thing, with all the help from Eurofund, from Jana and Christina, I think every task is manageable in this project. So, yeah. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was really great to hear. And I think I can note here that also this is in terms of looking up all this extra information, for example, for the coverage per collective agreement. This is also something I think, Christine, where the Eurofound correspondent network could step in and help out if this is a task that is really large for you. I would like to move on to the next testimonial. I would like to see if I can get the director of NIPA, Vladimir Boyadiev, to share your experiences.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. At the very beginning of this first stage of the project, we share with Eurofound and WageIndicator all the data we hold. I have to know that maybe it's not a sufficient one, but all our, let's say this way, questions which are as a tool for extract the information from collective bargaining agreements, we share with the organizers. And the challenge we faced is that we have no knowledge about the coding of the information made by national correspondents. And the second main challenge is that in each country there is a different subordination between levels of bargaining. You know, probably in Bulgaria we have industry branch level. It's mean almost economic sectors, the workplace collective bargaining agreement, and the collective bargaining agreement on the municipality level. And the dominant one is on the workplace level. We have some information about the agreed clauses in all collective bargaining agreements on workplace level, and we created a database including online, and we produce the annual report on collective bargaining. This year it was, I think, fifth report. It's published online, unfortunately only in Bulgarian language, and in this report there is information about almost 100 indicators. The information which is in industry or branch level CBAs, it's looks like framework information. I'm not aware that it's sufficient for analysis on wage payment, because our system of collective bargaining is that on workplace level they add something more, especially concerning the wages. The very important challenge through the next step of the project. We support this fully. It will be the information which the national information centers or register or sources for this kind of information will provide in the framework of minimum wage directive. And we have to prepare for this because it's very important. Finally, I would say that I'd like to say that the NICAS database is not only ours. This database on CBA is created with support and efforts of our social partners. So this system is for all, and they use the information and data during their policies in collective bargaining between trade unions and employers. I know we have no time, but you may access to our web page, and it's bilingual, Bulgarian and English, especially this part concerning the data about collective labor, collective bargaining agreements. You can see in this part the answer of such a question of in how many CBAs there are agreed on minimum wage above the national minimum wage, and what is the level of this agreement, especially for all those indicators concerning wage payment connected with the wages as additional labor remuneration, especially seniority allowances or bonuses for extra work time, etc. And I hope during the next stage of the project, we will compare, will get access in order to compare among the EU countries what is the level of minimum payment to get knowledge where are Bulgarian social partners in this system, how they realize their function. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. That's really interesting to hear. And I think everybody would appreciate it if you have the link to the website, if we can put it in the chat, that would be very welcome.
Yes, of course.
And I think your remarks about which level of bargaining, which agreement to take here, the company or the sector level, also speaks to the earlier question by the Danish colleagues very much. Thank you very much. And I would like to pass the word now to Sandro Tomaro from the Italian CNEL Institute, who will share his experience.
Buon pomeriggio, good afternoon. My name is Sandro Tomaro. I am an official at CNEL, CNEL is the Economic and Social Committee of Italy. We are a body and we work for the social partners of Italy. And I will be very short, very brief. I simply tell you that I met no challenges in supplying the data and information required by the Euro Foundation, simply because we already have such data and they are freely accessible at our internet site. During this meeting, I have learned that Euro Foundation have an expert for each country, and those experts can speak the local language. So it is very likely that your expert already knows our archive and is able to have direct access in the Italian language to our database. So our database is much richer and has other metadata beyond the ones you required. So those metadata, I suppose, I don't know who is the expert that is in charge of processing the Italian data, but it is very likely that the other metadata that we did not send, that you did not require, have been very helpful to this expert, because so he could find and individuate the most important contracts for the kind of jobs you were interested in your pilot survey. Okay, so we will keep on supporting you for during the next stages of your project as data suppliers. I give the floor. Thank you. I will not stay until the 5 p.m. because I have another meeting. And so I greet you now. I will follow you as long as I can.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Sandro. And you indeed have a very elaborate and very detailed system of metadata in Italy, which is very admirable. I would like to close by giving the word to our Swedish colleagues from the Medlings Institute. I know that Anna Fransson is here. Anna, I know that you have a colleague here as well, but I think you will be doing the presentation here. I'm very interested to hear also because you have a bit of a particular case, because you did not just deliver the data, but you also got much more involved in coding it. So I'm very interested in hearing what your experiences were.
Yes, thank you very much. In English, the Medlings Institute is Swedish National Mediation Office. And we are a small government agency with 3 principal tasks. We try our very best to promote an efficient wage formation process. And we are responsible for the official Swedish wage statistics. And we mediate in disputes of interest between social partners. And to fulfill our mediation assignment, we need to have information on collective agreements on the labor market. So we have no formal assignment to keep a registry or database, but we do have a registry as an internal work tool, you can say. And it covers all of the around 650 sector level collective agreements on wages and general conditions. We have developed this tool fairly recently, so unfortunately the archive only goes back to 2017. To go earlier than that would require a lot of more work, and we have not been able to do that at this point. But as it turned out, the design of our registry worked quite well with the needs of the minimum wage database project, metadata. So from the registry, we could fairly easily provide most of the metadata requested, both the essential variables and also some of the ones that were stated as good to have. However, there are a few big exceptions, as have been mentioned already. And the most obvious is that we cannot provide links to the full texts of the collective agreements. And Christine explained this very well. And a little more background perhaps is that perhaps some of you know that Sweden is not the biggest fan of the idea of minimum wage regulations on EU level. And part of the background here is that it is an important feature of the labor market model in Sweden, that it's the social partners that are in control of the wage formation. This means that it's very much hands off for the government. And so because of this, it was not an option for us to include this information to the metadata or to the database. And also we did not have any information on NACE codes or ISCO codes connected to a registry. But the ISCO we still don't have any information on, and we have no plan to include it currently. But as a result of the request from Eurofound, we did an effort and have attached NACE codes to digit level to the relevant collective agreements. And for most of the selected agreement, it was fairly straightforward to do this at the 2-digit level. Some or quite a few of the collective agreements cover several of 2-digit level NACE codes. So in the next step, it can be tricky to identify which NACE codes is relevant to different minimum wage levels. And there may, of course, always be some exceptions where collective agreements cover very small groups of workers that may belong to a different NACE code than the majority in the agreement. So there may be need to have some extra scrutiny to whether such exemptions relate to those covered by minimum wages in the agreements, because they can be very specific groups that actually have the minimum wages in large collective agreements. And when it comes to the number of workers covered, we only have fairly rough estimates in our registry. So the figures, they also may not be fully up to date. And we think that they should be considered something as of a best guess. But it's the only guess we have, kind of. So they should be used with caution together with other data, we think. And to summarize, we were able to use the information that was available in our registry. And it has not been much additional work for us to deliver this metadata. So that was the work on the metadata, and I haven't said much else about the database, but we also did some of the coding. But we haven't provided all of the variables here, but we have kind of a smaller version from Sweden in the database.
Thank you very much, Anna. And thanks for doing so much extra work for this project. It's been really good to have you on board. We knew in advance that Sweden would be one of the most challenging countries to code and to include in this database. So it's really very valuable to have you on board from the beginning. I think the estimates of the number of workers covered by collective agreements are estimates in any country. Even just to start with the fact that the number of people covered by an agreement change constantly, right? But then there's so many specificities, so many differences there that I think it's an estimate in all countries. And in terms of the NACE overlap, I think it's been really valuable to see that the country-specific expertise is really needed there to decide what NACE code or what sector code a collective agreement actually applies to. So thank you for that.
Yes, but I think we realized that it worked better than we thought with the NACE codes. We were all, through the years, we have said that it's impossible, but at least for those agreements, it was quite possible.
Thank you. That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes when we try the impossible, it turns out to be possible, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a very good